Hi, my name is Philip King. Welcome to this tutorial series on writing a WordPress plugin. Since each of the tutorials in this series builds on each other, I recommend you progress through the tutorials in the order they are presented. All of the code for these video tutorials will be shown in the videos, but obviously you cannot copy the code using cut and paste from a video. So a text version of the code, along with articles to accompany the video series, is available on my website. The link is shown below. This lesson is part of the series covering the WordPress administration menus and options pages. In this lesson we will go a step further with admin menus by demonstrating how to save your admin options to the database. We will accomplish this by expanding upon the text-to-hyperlink example I introduced in an earlier lesson. Lesson Objectives. This is quite an extensive lesson, the primary aim of which is to construct a user menu that will allow us to use the WordPress database to store the data for our text-to-hyperlink plugin. So, in this lesson, we will be taking what we have learned so far about admin menus, combining this knowledge with our text-to-hyperlink lesson, saving the user data in the WordPress database, retrieving that data, parsing page content for a keyword, and changing that keyword to a hyperlink. The topics we need to implement to achieve this objective are: construct an admin menu, construct a user panel, save user data to the WordPress database, retrieve data from the WordPress database, modify data in the WordPress database, delete data in the WordPress database, parse page content for keywords, modify keywords if required, attach a hyperlink to the keyword. Other than the introduction of the database requirements, nothing is actually new in this lesson, just implemented differently. Although a few items may look a little different, just look back at the previous lessons and you will see that we are just covering the same stages and the same steps as before. They are just a little more involved. This lesson example can be grouped into the following sections: the class and its declaration, which we've already covered; the plugin filter and action hooks, which we've already covered; the text-to-hyperlink function, which has been modified to accommodate database interaction; the admin menu function, which uses the same methods discussed in previous lessons; the user page, which contains the form and code for interfacing with the database; and finally, plugin cleanup. I will briefly discuss all sections, but concentrate on those areas covering form construction and database interaction in this lesson. WordPress plugins and database interaction. When writing your plugins, you will inevitably need to store and retrieve data. Most useful WordPress plugins need to get data from users and save it between sessions, for use in filter, action and template functions. This information has to be saved in the WordPress database in order to be persistent between sessions. Fortunately for us, WordPress makes data storage and retrieval a relatively simple task with options and database objects. Storing data in a database. For our purposes, there are two recommended ways to store data in the WordPress database. The first is to use the WordPress option mechanism. This method is appropriate for storing small amounts of relatively static, named pieces of data. The second is to create your own database table. This method is appropriate for data not associated with individual posts, pages, attachments or comments, the type of data that will grow as time goes on. Unless your plugin requires an extensive database or you're storing lots of records or variables, most plugins will not require their own database tables, and options will suffice. We will cover WordPress database interaction in more detail in a later lesson. The WordPress option mechanism. Since this is a simple plugin, we will use the WordPress options mechanism in this lesson. With WordPress options, saving and retrieving data from the database can be as simple as a function call. WordPress has 4 functions for options: add option, update option, get option, and delete option. The add option. The add option creates a new option, i.e. adds data to the database. It does nothing if the option already exists. The function accepts 4 variables: with the name variable being required. The name variable should be unique to prevent overwriting of existing options. I suggest you seriously consider using the update option function instead of this function, as it does the same thing but better. The update option. The update option either creates or updates an option value in the database. The function accepts two variables, both of which are required. This function is basically the same as the add option, with the proviso that this function is much simpler to use than the add option. The get option. The get option function allows you to retrieve a previously stored option from the database. It requires only one variable, which is the name of the option to retrieve. The delete option. The delete option function, as you might expect, deletes options from the database. OK, let's look at a coding example. One of the easiest methods of storing options in the database is as an associative array. I also declare the database field name in a variable, rather than as a string in the getOptions function. This is better programming practice in my opinion. This prevents storing multiple options, each of which would be a database call. The technique helps with code bloat and helps prevent naming collisions with other plugin authors. This is how the code would look. Plugin cleanup. Cleaning up after plugin deletion is a topic we haven't touched on before. When deleting previous plugin examples, WordPress handled everything necessary for the plugin removal. With database interaction comes a responsibility for cleaning up after ourselves. Luckily, this can be accomplished relatively easily by including an uninstall file in our plugins directory called Uninstall.php. The WordPress codex also details the register uninstall hook, which will be called when the user clicks on the uninstall link, so requiring the plugin to uninstall itself. Personally, I find the hook cumbersome at best and prefer using the Uninstall.php way of uninstalling plugins rather than the register uninstall hook. To use Uninstall.php, simply create a file named Uninstall.php in the base plugin folder. This file will be called if it exists during the uninstall process, bypassing the uninstall hook. Just place everything needed to clean up the plugin in this file. Think of it as a class destructor. Generally, this will simply be a case of removing data and tables from the database using the WordPress function calls. In our case, the only thing we need to do is delete the pkadmin options data record. This is accomplished with the delete option function. The only thing you must remember when using Uninstall.php is to always check for the WP uninstall plugin constant before executing any code. The WP uninstall plugin constant is defined by WordPress at runtime during a plugin uninstall. It will not be present if Uninstall.php is requested directly. In this lesson, we use both the add filter and the add action WordPress hooks. The add filter hook is used to pass post or page content to our pk text to hyperlink function. The add action hook is used to call our admin menu via the pkaddPages function. Variable declarations. As stated earlier, the database field name we'll be using is declared in the variable pkadminOptionsName. This name must be unique. The data for our example will be stored in the associative array adminOptionsArray. Notice this array has been given default values, which match the values used in the previous lesson. There is no particular reason for this. I just thought it would be nice to continue from where we left off. The hidden field name variable is just the usual hidden form test parameter. The text to hyperlink function works basically the same as in previous lessons, except this time the values can be changed via an options page and they are now persistent as the values are stored in the database. The function gets data from the WordPress database options table field, pkadminOptionsName, using the getOptions function. If there is no data, the default values are used and the database updated. The post content is then parsed for the stipulated keyword or phrase and modified as necessary before being returned to WordPress for further processing. Next, the add function for the add action admin menu hook. The function pk add pages simply adds the submenu pk test settings under the top level settings menu item. The options page and user panel. The options page is created by the pk test settings page function. This begins by checking that the user has the required capability and then reading the existing option values from the database if they exist, or using the default values if there are no entries in the database. The user form is then placed on the page. Should the user enter new data on the form and click the Save Changes button, this function will test for the hidden field variable, hidden field name, and if true, the admin options array updated with the new values, which are then saved to the database. OK, let's see the code in action. Once again, I'll be using PDT Eclipse as my code editor in this exercise. First, we need to create a class for this plugin, so copy the PK plugin class template we created previously to a new folder in the WP Content Plugins folder and give it the name PK Admin Menu 0v3. Enter a folder name of PK Admin Menu 0v3. Now we need to rename the PHP file, so open our new plugin folder and rename the PK plugin class PHP file to pkadminmenu 0v3.php. Remember, the plugin file name has to be the same name as the folder with the PHP extension. Then open the file, ready for editing. The first thing we need to do with our new plugin is enter a new plugin name and description so that WordPress will recognize the plugin. Then enter a new version number. We now need to create a more appropriate class name, which will be pkadminmenu 0v3. This is simply a case of renaming all occurrences of the PK plugin template class to pkadminmenu 0v3. There are 6 changes to be made. I'm just going to use find and replace for this task. Now that we have our plugin class, we need an instance of that class. So change the template instance PK plugin demo to a more appropriate name, pkadminmenu 0v3 demo. Now we are ready to enter our code. Begin by entering the local class variables just after the placeholder comment. To do, variable declarations go here. Next, we need to hook our functions into WordPress in 2 places. One hook for the text to hyperlink function and one hook for the menu system. Enter both hooks just after the placeholder comment. To do, enter plugin actions and filters here. Now enter the text to hyperlink function, pk text to hyperlink. Just after the placeholder comment. To do, enter action and filter methods here. Next, enter the pk add pages function directly after the pk text to hyperlink function. Finally, enter the pk test settings page function directly after the pk add pages function. With the plugin code entered, let's save the file and create the Uninstall.php file. So, create a file called Uninstall.php in the same folder as our plugin. That's the WP Content Plugins pkadmin menu 0v3 folder. Enter the file name uninstall.php, open the file, and enter the uninstall.php code. With the code entered, let's save the file and see what happens in WordPress. Log into WordPress as the administrator and navigate to Dashboard, Plugins, Installed Plugins to check that our plugin has been recognized but is inactive. We'll begin by checking the current status of the blog. The WordPress keyword should be unchanged at this stage. So return to the Plugins page and activate the plugin. Let's check the blog page again. Refresh the page by pressing the F5 key. And this time the WordPress keyword should have been capitalized and changed to a hyperlink. Once again, return to the Plugins page and select the Settings, PK Test Settings menu link. What we need to do now is change our keyword parameters. I'm just going to keep using the same keyword as before, but enter some new replacement text and a new hyperlink address. Save the changes to the database, return yet again to the blog page, refresh the page, and the WordPress keyword has been replaced with the new parameters. Clicking the link brings me to my web page, so everything seems to be working. Next, we'll have a look at what's actually happening inside the MySQL database. Open the WordPress database using phpMyAdmin. This should be the PK plugin class database if you've been following the tutorials. Then navigate to the WP Options record set. Scroll through the records and find the PK Admin Options data entry. Then select Edit when you've found the record. This is how our data is represented in the database. When you've finished viewing the record, return to the Plugins page and deactivate the plugin. Go to the blog page and check that the plugin has been deactivated. With the plugin deactivated, let's see what's happened to the database. Notice that nothing has happened. The data is unchanged. Deactivating the plugin does not delete the data. If, on the other hand, we delete the plugin, and then see what's happened to the database, you should see that our data record has been removed. This is because when we delete the plugin, WordPress calls our uninstall.php file as part of the delete process, and this file in turn removes the database record. Hopefully this tutorial gave you a good insight into how simple an administration menu, options page, database interaction and cleanup can be. Well, that's all for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next lesson.